Okay, seems we are live. Okay, so welcome everyone. My name is Virginia Fiume and I am the coordinator of Eumans, and this is the Eumans weekly meeting, recently renamed Eumans Speakeasy. And it's an opportunity to have conversations and also discussions on actions that can be taken for helping European citizens to have an impact on European policies, national policies, and local policies, which is the spirit of Eumans, the pan-European movement that we are building week after week through the activation of participatory democracy instruments, but also through the collaboration with citizens and organizations across Europe for goals around democracy and sustainability. The topic of tonight is, the title tells a lot, is the future of European citizens' political rights. And this title encapsulates different aspects of campaigning and actions that we work on as an organization, but also we work on in collaboration with some of the speakers that are with us tonight to help us to understand what do we talk when we talk about European political rights and democratic rights, particularly around three main angles. The first one is the Conference on the Future of Europe. This is a name and label that a lot of people that follow Eumans familiarized quite a lot with. It was, and we will discover this with the help particularly of Daniela Vancic from Democracy International and Citizens Take Over Europe. It was aimed to start on the 9th of May 2020, and it was meant to be a very important democratic moment of the European Union. With Daniela, we will explore what is the Conference on the Future of Europe, but also what we all together are trying to do to make sure that this appointment not only happens, but happens with a clear angle on a clear design around the real participation of citizens in this process. The second angle is the one of participatory democracy instruments, those that are already existing in the European Union, and the European Citizen Initiative is probably the most known or unknown. And we will explore this with Marco Cappato, who is the president of Eumans, but also the co-promoter or promoter of Stopglobalwarming.eu, which is the European Citizen Initiative for carbon pricing that Eumans is currently active on, and that has the goal of collecting 1 million signatures to be taken into consideration by the European Commission. The deadline of this collection is the 22nd of April. So in the meantime, you that are following, you can also go and sign the initiative. But with Marco, we will see why, even if the extension that the European Commission gave to the progression of the collection of signatures for the ECIs, it's problematic if it doesn't, and it's not a full fulfillment of European citizens' political rights. So with Marco, we'll see this aspect. And then we are very glad to have the promoters of another European citizen initiative, and I'm forgetting a bit, sorry, I will go back to that, Voterswithoutborders.eu, and the local committee of the 3 million young Europeans, which are people that saw their political rights as European citizens literally destroyed by the Brexit. Some rights that were taken for granted are not anymore, but Voters Without Borders gives us also the opportunity to see how political rights of European citizens can be expanded. And we also have Camille, Dobler and Michele Fiorillo, I don't know if he's already connected, who are also part of the Citizens Takeover Coalition, and with them we will explore the role of the European citizen assemblies and European and sortition-based citizen assemblies, which is another topic and action for us as humans, how these can be scaled at a European level and how it can be institutionalized. And this is part of the conversation that Citizens Take Over Europe and the challenges for the Conference on the Future of Europe are hold together. So thanks everyone for joining. I asked all the discussants to be short in their introductions so that then there is more space to ask them questions, but also have a conversation about concrete actions that we can take together. I think each of the speakers has an angle that implies activation for us. Also, we will bring this conversation forward in the next meetings as part of the steps that we do as a movement. I remind us that on the 9th of March, we will have the Eumans Members Assembly, and our goal is to be able to have an official constitutive assembly around June or July, ideally in Warsaw, if the pandemic will allow us to do it. So this is a part of an elaboration process that we do together. Without much further ado, I will give the floor to Daniela Vancic. So we start from the Conference on the Future of Europe, and I think that's the best way to start, because it seemed an utopia. Now it seems less an utopia, so maybe you can help us to understand what it is and what we are doing together to make this happen in the most democratic way possible.
Yeah, thanks so much, Virginia. And yeah, I think that was a really good introduction. I mean, really, first to just put it out there, why this conference is so different, or why we hope it's so different from every other democratic exercise that the EU starts, and why is it that civil society is putting so much energy into this, is that it was really promised to us that it won't be like every other democratic exercise of the EU. At least what was promised to us from von der Leyen is, and the parliament agrees with this, is that citizens would be equal partners. Those are the exact words that were used, and that the agenda would be open, and that treaty change topics could be discussed. And that's a pretty big deal, because for years the EU politicians were really shying away from saying the words treaty change at all, because as you know, to change the treaties, we will need to have an EU convention, not to be confused with a conference. That's according to Article 48 of the Lisbon Treaty. And last time this took place, 20 years ago, it was really heavily criticized for being very top-down, very intransparent, having very little role for the citizens. And only after such a long process, we finally got the Lisbon Treaty. So you can imagine the institutions are probably a little bit afraid to even begin such a bureaucratic process again. But it's getting to a point where we see, especially I think with the pandemic, this has really brought this to light, that the EU's competences are just so limited when we need really quick and efficient action. And the current treaties are not really allowing for that to happen. We're a little bit stuck in this box of how do we act beyond the member states? How do we act together as a union? So it puts the EU in a really tricky position. If the treaties could be amended, for example, this is something we could have planned for, and we could have probably acted a little bit quicker and better and more efficient in the pandemic and vaccine rollout and everything. Yeah, so I mean, this conference basically won't just, we don't want it just to be like another democratic exercise, but we really wanted to look at like critically where we are as the EU now, and where our priorities should lie. And yeah, I mean, even the fact that treaty change is a topic, we haven't heard this for 20 years. So that the fact that this conference could trigger that, that really is groundbreaking and historic for the EU. So it could be that this is the very early stages for history in the making in the EU. And now to go back to what civil society has been doing, and what we have been doing also with Citizens Take Over Europe to make sure that this conference really does happen, because we've heard over and over again from parliamentarians who share the same frustrations as us at this point, that the conference hasn't started. They've told us that really civil society is actually doing all of the right things right now. We're really maintaining that pressure. We're creating coalitions and campaigns specifically around the conference. Beyond Citizens Take Over Europe, there are at least 2 or 3 other initiatives and groups of civil society that are working specifically on the conference. So civil society is really uniting on this, and even sometimes making their own groups, but still this is a topic that is still really front and center for a lot of civil society organizations right now. So what we're really trying to do with Citizens Take Over Europe is we're trying to really lead by example and put all of our positions out there about how the conference should look like. Because the conference at this point is almost 10 months postponed, and we have no idea when it should start. Institutions have no idea when it should really start. Europe Day is, again, a date that's floating out there, but we have been waiting for 10 months for this joint declaration, for some kind of blueprint for how the conference will look like. That's not out there. And I mean, a lot of politicians are sharing the frustrations with us. But this deadlock in this political deadlock that is existing now, we're trying to at least get past that to say, okay, we try to at least find a solution around it. And that solution would be bring citizens into the conversation, that there's a way we can do this democratically. For example, I mean, one of the biggest reasons you probably know why the conference hasn't started is that there's a deadlock on who should chair the presidency. Should it be one person? Now the recent council position says it should be a shared presidency with 3, one from Parliament, Council, and Commission. And we have a position out there. Okay, a way out of this deadlock would be let's start with the tripart presidency, if this is a way to start, okay, but let then the conference decide its own president. So the members of the conference itself can also choose and elect its own president. This is also not the first time that this has happened. There's also in many different conferences that brought us the Charter of Fundamental Rights, for example, that conference has also chose its own presidency. So there is precedent for this, and this is kind of what we try to do with Citizens Take Over Europe, is to try to find a way out of all this, to say that the conference can still start. We don't need to be sitting here and kind of frozen in time waiting for this to begin. A few other kind of advocacy tools that we've used, because I run the advocacy and policy working group at Citizens Take Over Europe. We've also early on submitted an open letter to Angela Merkel and the 3 EU institutions. This was while Germany was the president of the council last semester. We also published 10 guiding principles for how a citizen-centered conference should look like. And then we also recently submitted an official petition to the European Parliament, where we just recently got a response that the petition has been forwarded to the Constitutional Affairs Committee and now also to the Commission. So yeah, the petition is actually still is now open for signatures. I can find the link and send it also in the chat if you'd like to sign it. But yeah, that's just a little bit of some of the advocacy tools that we're doing. Really, at the end of the day, with the Alliance, we're really trying to just put the conference still, keep it front and center, to keep the dialogue going. We meet at least twice a week with the Alliance, so we don't lose sight of this, because it's easy after 10 months, you can get frustrated. A lot of civil society can say, okay, we have other projects now to work on, but we really see the potential in this conference, so that's why we really don't want to lose sight of it, and we want to keep the pressure there on the politicians.
Thank you, Daniela, also because you were very synthetic, even though the topic could take 2 meetings a week at least, we can confirm, and that's just the basis. I'm gonna share in the chat for all of us also the link to the petition to the European Parliament, because even if we got a first reply, it can still be subscribed by citizens in form of support. So if you guys want to do it, and of course we will go back to the point if anyone has questions or comments. As part of these actions for the Conference on the Future of Europe, another action that we bring together with Citizens Take Over Europe is that if European citizen assemblies are not included in the project of the Conference on the Future of Europe, we will be happy to self-organize one if need be, in the sense that we cannot wait for the whole process to take maybe 20 years to happen. And on the other hand, European citizen assemblies in general are a precious additional instrument to the functioning of democracy, according also to many academics, groups, and experiences across Europe. We have with us also Lorenzo Mineo, who is in the working group of Citizens Take Over Europe, beside being the Eumans coordinator of Italian initiatives. There should be also Michele Fiorillo, who is not here. So before giving the floor to Camille, maybe Lorenzo, if you are ready to explain briefly where the idea of a European Citizens Assembly's manifesto came from, and what this manifesto aims to achieve. And then we will give the floor to Camille to go more in detail on how the concept was conceived.
Yeah, first of all, I'm happy to leave the floor to Camille after my introduction, because she's the real leader of this initiative, and I'm just helping. But the idea is coming out from the fact that citizen assembly, so we spoke many times about it. This is this new method of democracy, by which citizens that are run by lot, they are put in touch with experts, they discuss for months, and they deepen social problems, and they present proposals and solutions on social issues, which is something that many times electoral democracy has no time to do, because there is always this opposition between majority and opposition, because there is always the need to be re-elected for politicians, and so many times they don't think that much about the public needs. And so we know that European institutions started to take into consideration a citizen assembly in the form of the agoras that would be part of the conference on the future of Europe. We hope so, because we were pushing together with Daniela and with the Citizen Takeover Europe for the fact that the conference on the future of Europe should have been convocated a year ago and not delayed. But in this form of conference, we also, according to the design of the European institution, take into consideration citizen assemblies. And so, but we also think, as a European coalition, as European activists, that if they don't do it, we as civil society must be ready to start that process, and so also to collect resources and organization to create a coalition to organize that. And so from that we have the idea of a European Citizen Assembly. But we also think...
Sorry, there was the background noise.
No, I mean, that's it. Maybe Camille can help.
Yeah. Sorry, I was checking the video on YouTube and I was hearing you twice, so I didn't know who was speaking. Thanks, Lorenzo. So yes, Camille, I think you worked concretely on a beginning of the design of a European Citizen Assembly. And so I think it's helpful for us to get a sense of how imagining something that is actually representative with deliberative power, and also something that can be scaled at a European level. Usually experience of citizen assemblies are quite local or regional or national. So can you help us to understand the dream that you put on paper?
Yeah, of course, sure. It's a shame that Michele is not here, because as nice as Lorenzo is, I think he's the real leader and philosopher of our group. So the idea goes back to him. But I'll do my best, because it's a very hard question you ask me. And to jump maybe on what Daniela said, she said that the Citizen Takeover Europe is about trying to take the best, to use this momentum of the conference and try to use it to our benefit. Well, what we try to do with our working group is actually to see what we can do with this after the conference ends. So this is a more longer term project. It is a bit more, let's say, research, or maybe some people will say idealistic, and a bit less advocacy based. Idealistic, I do not necessarily think it is, because as you also said, there is a lot of European citizen assemblies that are literally multiplying everywhere. At the local level now, it's actually pretty, I'm not going to say basic, but it's actually becoming quite standard to see citizen assemblies. We see them also at the national level now in Europe more and more. So the idea to have a European one, of course, is not that utopic. It raised, though, a certain number of big challenges. So in our working group, there are things that for us are very, very clear. For example, the idea of sortition, this one, of course, that is the fundamental of any citizen assembly. So of course, this one at the European level, you need to keep it. But who says sortition then says, okay, it is one thing to select randomly as citizens living, I do not know, let's say in Rome, and to ask him maybe to travel to Naples or vice versa. There is a train connection, it's relatively easy. Maybe he could do that every 3 weeks or so over for a period of 6 months. If he's compensated, maybe there are ways to make it work. If you ask citizens to come from part of Europe that are, let's say, I do not know, the very north of Finland, for example, or in Transylvania, in Romania, where it's quite difficult to reach transportation, and ask them to regularly travel to Brussels, you already see that there is a very logistic and concrete problem here. So sortition, yes, but how do we actually make it workable for normal, ordinary citizens? Because the point of also of a European Citizen Assembly is that people have the time to deliberate. So who says time did that they need to meet several times, not just once or twice. So that is the first challenge that we have. So there are ways to go around it. You can create European Citizen Assemblies and work more with the idea of agoras and do them more a bit local or regional level, or work with European cross-border regions, for example. So there are solutions here. They are maybe not optimal, but they are actually pragmatic. So this is also something you need to consider. A second problem, which is maybe a bit more philosophical and political and less practical, is, well, once you have this and it works, what do you actually do with it within the bigger institutional framework of the EU? Which is actually pretty complicated already, as you know, because you have the three institutions. None of them, of course, are willing to let that easily citizens take over their prerogative, but you also already have to advisory institutions also with the EAS and the Committee of Regions. So what do we do with those? Do this means that they are kind of becoming irrelevant? I mean, we are working with organized civil society, so maybe we would not like for them to become irrelevant. So you need to actually make a way for them to work if you want them to have citizen assemblies become permanent, which is also one of the objectives and one of the things we are campaigning for. We would like this new mechanism of participatory democracy to actually be institutionalized in a way. And I think a precedent here that is good to remember is that the last time there was some sort of conference on the future of Europe, it was a convention, and the European Citizen Initiative came out of it. So the idea is indeed to kind of keep in mind that democracy is always something that evolves, that is a process, and that it needs to reflect social demands and social expectation of people, and that it is not just okay to vote every 5 years and demonstrate once in a while. You need to be able to take part in deliberation, but not just during the conference, also after the conference. So how do we fit that in the institutional framework? That is what our working group is working on, and we wrote a manifesto on this as well, hopefully to be published soon. Also having some guiding principles, and we are cooperating with Daniela working group on this. And I think Virginia will also share the link of the manifesto with you shortly. So maybe I can stop here and we can come back to one of these points I mentioned. If you have ideas, of course, do not hesitate to share them.
Thank you very much, Camille, because I think, as I said, for all the Eumans, people, friends, pastors, the conference on the future of Europe is something that is sometimes difficult to grasp in its relevance, and the way how you described also how European citizen assemblies can show how citizens can take part in the European processes within that context and outside that context. I share the link here. So just to summarize for all of us, we already have two potential actions from this meeting. One is the support, official support to the petition to the European Parliament, which is the institutional hook that Citizens Takeover chose to have for the Conference on the Future of Europe, and we can follow the work of the manifesto of the European Citizen Assemblies. Now, as Camille was also mentioning, politics, and we talk about political rights, so even if as a movement we think participatory democracy is something essential because it's a way to not being politically active only between the elections, but elections are part of the democratic process. So we move the angle of the meeting, and I leave the floor to Manlio Trovato, who, beside being a Eumans activist, he fell in love for the European Citizen Initiative Voters Without Borders. And Manlio is also based in the UK. So I think his introduction to the next two speakers is gonna help us to draw some interesting lines. So Manlio Trovato, the floor is yours to introduce also the next speakers.
Thank you very much. Yes, certainly we here as citizens, because we want to take over Europe, but perhaps because we take care of Europe. And as citizens, we take care of our citizenship a lot. And voting rights are parts of our how we identify citizenships, together with the way we participate in democracy. Very interesting, the concept of permanent assembly, citizen assembly, because it really gives a sense that as we look in the future, what normally citizens would do at the margin of political activities actually needs to become an integral part of the political activity. We as a group of citizens are now trying to engage within institutional instruments in order to make a change and trigger a change such that citizens can be closer to politics. And being closer to politics, it means taking care of our common good and taking care of society. A number of things we've been talking about. And what we want to talk about with the next two speakers is our voting rights and what it means for us in Europe and in UK. A little, I am based in UK. I am an Italian citizen. I moved to UK 25 years ago. I've exercised one of those beautiful freedoms that the European Union provides, which is the freedom of movement, and thought I had EU citizenship, which I do. But I discovered that's a very, very weak citizenship because it does not come with full voting rights. And when UK decided to vote for or against the membership of the European Union, I could not do that, even though I had been contributed to the society for more than 20 years. Clearly, that feels wrong to me, and it doesn't feel to me that enfranchises citizens in the common good and in able to have a say. So as we are, one of the things that we think we're good at is that we not only we talk about things, but we also identify potential actions that can change things in a way that allows us to talk to the institutions to change things. And here we have two specific campaigns which look to achieve two important objectives. One campaign is the Voting Without Borders, that allows to extend the voting rights of all European citizens in the European Union. You should be able to have voting rights based on your residency, not on your nationality. If I live in a member state and I'm European citizens, I should be able to have that voting right. And the other one is what happened to then to the European citizens who are now still in the UK, and how they can contribute to the political life in the United Kingdom. So those are the very two important aspects, both of them linked to how we see the future of engaging European citizens in politics and how we can make a change. So I'd like to pass the floor to Iago to talk about the Voting Without Borders European Citizenship Initiative. And then after Iago, Antonia and Andras can talk us about what we're doing in the European Union with the 3 million in order to engage European citizens in political life. Iago, the floor is yours.
Hello, I'm Iago. I'm Iago Rodriguez. I'm a member of Voters Without Borders. And so basically the 2 main pillars of this initiative is the first one is to guarantee the electoral participation of those mobile EU citizens that want to still vote in their country of nationality. So right now, expatriate voting systems, which is a national and competence of national administrations, but they all have in common mostly that they have very lengthy and costly procedures that end up demobilizing and disenfranchising these voters. And then the second pillar of the initiative is to expand, as Manlio was saying, European citizenship, what it entails, to cover national, regional, and referendums. So for instance, now, for many European citizens that have moved home, they have to choose between exercising their right to free movement, risking to lose their right to vote in national elections, which of course, it doesn't make sense that you have to choose between exercising one right or the other. So I think it remains a problem for European democracy. And what we're doing is putting this forward. We're trying to campaign with different elections where there's a broader conversation, voting rights by civil society, the press, politicians. And then we're also doing research on these voting system problems, and we're sending them to parliamentary committees, the commission. More recently as well, we have Beniamino, our coordinator, has presented the initiative in the debate on the ECI at the plenary session of the European Committee of the Regions. I think this happened 2 weeks ago, more or less. And we're also currently preparing a presentation of our initiative to the socialist delegation of the Committee of the Regions, and also presenting it to the European Pirate Party as well. Beyond this, we also, because we're coordinating with other partners and media and MEPs, etc., we also want to take part of other citizenship participation instruments, like you mentioned, like the petitions to the Parliament or the Conference on the Future of Europe.
Thank you, Iago. And I would say this would be great if this could be also taken on board by the Citizens Takeover Europe network, because it's really the heart of European citizenship and promote this initiative. I can remind the website is Voterswithoutborders.eu, and it'd be great to promote that. Linked to that, I'll pass the floor to Antonia to talk about what we're doing for European citizens who are in the United Kingdom and how they can participate in political life in the United Kingdom. Antonia and then Andras, please.
Sure. Hello, and good evening / afternoon / morning to where everybody is based. So I am Antonia. I am the Outreach and Campaigns Coordinator for the 3 million, and more specifically the Young Europeans Network within the 3 million. And basically what we're doing at the moment is we're running a 6-month voter registration and mobilization campaign. We're focusing on EU citizens who are based in the UK. My role is more of young Europeans, but we're also focusing on just all European citizens in general. The whole point is we're trying to encourage EU citizens in a couple of different local areas to be able to understand that they have voting rights, because a lot of citizens don't actually realize that they can vote in local elections, for example. So our main role is to kind of get rid of all this misinformation and encourage voters to vote in the elections, which at the moment is quite difficult based on, you know, the whole coronavirus pandemic. Getting people out and voting is quite difficult, but it's more important than ever, especially after Brexit, with this idea of trying to make sure that the citizens who are based in the UK, regardless of nationality, have their voices heard. And we're doing that in a variety of different ways. I'm focusing very much on a grassroots campaign to make sure that young EU citizens, again, can mobilize and partnering with local authorities and local organizations. So if you're interested in talking to me more, I'll put my email in the chat. But yes, we're also focusing on collaborating with politicians and with political parties, which I will let Andreas talk a little bit more about.
Thank you, Antonia, and thank you for inviting us to this interesting meeting. So, as Antonia said, we are both working on this campaign, and I lead on the engagement with the political parties in the UK, especially in England, the Conservatives, Labour, Lib Dems, and the Greens. Our campaign is focusing on England only at this stage, and what we are trying to do is to inform them and kind of educate them that EU citizens can still vote, because this is absolutely not something that everybody is aware of. I have been reaching out to all parties. You may find it very surprising that the Lib Dems and Labour and the Greens are quite open to talking to us. The Conservatives have so far been a bit more reluctant to getting back to us, but we are not giving up. We are contacting them and trying to help them engage with EU voters. That's the idea, that if there is a campaigner in Northeast England and they are knocking on the door of an EU citizen, they know that they can actually vote in May at the local election. So that's what we are trying to do. This campaign builds on a research that the 3 Million has done last summer, which has found that EU citizens, their registration in the UK elections is very, very low. It's about 50% of the eligible EU citizens are registered, so it's very low. So we try to mobilize the citizens, and we are focusing on young people, as Antonia said. I would say the longer term objective of this project is of course, to increase engagement and increase voter mobilization and their participation at the election, and also so that later we can show it to the UK government that, look, EU citizens are voting, and this would maybe be an incentive to preserve local voting rights in the UK after 2021. Our launch event is going to be on 1st of March. I'm going to put in a link in the chat later. It would be nice if you could join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Andreas, and thanks, Manlio, Antonia, to shading this slide that goes from the very local to the EU and European, because also in the invite of the event, I made what it might have seen a mistake, but it's important, at least when we define things, that unfortunately or fortunately, when we talk about the European Union, we talk about a certain geographical and political space, and then there is the Europe as such. So it's very complicated. There are always layers of complications. As we head toward the round of discussion, and sorry for it's maybe a bit too long, but I think it was really good to hear stories that on one side analyze a matter, but on the other side showed the type of action that can be carried on and the methodology to carry on these actions. And I think for us as a movement, this is the key. It's like how we can transform what is a burning issue into an action that can have a real impact. And on the other side, I think for a lot of people in the meeting tonight is an opportunity to know other things that are happening and other organizations that are trying to do things, and maybe just as Manlio did with Voters Without Borders, like is not less a Eumans because he's engaged with an ECI that is not Stopglobalwarming.eu, but to a certain extent he brings himself to the Voters Without Borders, and it allows us to have this exchange. Talking about how to create moments of joint actions. Citizens Takeover was an example, and now before giving the floor to Marco Cappato, I want to mention a proposal for the Voters Without Borders team. That's an ambush, but also to something that we should propose to all other promoters of European Citizen Initiative. The idea is to ask again Commissioner Jourova, who is the commissioner in charge of also the participatory democracy instruments of the European Union, to not only allow this extension, which I already did on the collection of signatures for European Citizen Initiative, but also to ensure actions of information about the rights of European citizens. So are extraordinary and ordinary measures that ensure that all European citizens know that there are ongoing European citizen initiatives and that they have the ability to sign. I'm going to share the draft of this letter in the chat, and also I think it's a good assist for Marco Cappato, president of Eumans, because as he often reminds us, and also what the story of the UK, I think, teach in part is that if we don't use the political rights that we have, then it's very risky and we risk to lose them. So I think calling the Commissioner Jourova right now for a special effort around European Citizen Initiative that suggests matters such as issues related to climate change, voting rights. There are a couple of initiatives on digital rights. I mean, are precious inputs for the European Commission and things that we should demand attention and a role in the political debate of the European Union. On the other side, I think, and maybe this is a question for Daniela later on, or we can open up discussions later, but to a certain extent, I think the matters that are pushed forward via the European Citizen Initiative are also somehow topics that the scope of the Conference on the Future of Europe should somehow take into consideration, because there is an element of designing the Conference on the Future of Europe, there is an element of having that happen, but also what is going to talk about. And I think all these type of actions that we carry on, I mean, they would have a nice home within the context of the Conference on the Future of Europe. So now the floor to Marco Cappato to make us think about participatory democracy and the dark side of it and the right side of it.
Thank you, Virginia, and hello to everybody. Thank you for having conceived this meeting as not just a meeting of ideas, but also a meeting of initiatives and proposals. And it seems that for each of the ideas that were proposed to this meeting, it corresponds an initiative that we can join and we can support. And this is very concrete and very important. So I will not talk about the content of the European Citizen Initiative Stopglobalwarming.eu. Just to remind, is the idea of having a European carbon pricing, shifting taxes from labor to CO2 emission. But what I think it could be relevant tonight is to underline, well, I have a conviction that there are some groups and organizations that are saying that 1 million signatures are too many, is a too high threshold for European Citizen Initiative. I think that in reality, the very issue is about information. 1 million signatures are not that much on climate change. I am sure that would be easy to find many more citizens than the 50,000 that we have found by now. And also, Voters Without Borders is an idea that can unite communities of expats, but also of ordinary citizens all over Europe. And it would not be difficult to find much more than 1 million people agreeing on that proposal. The problem is the lack of information. So I think that this instrument that Virginia is proposing to us with the Eumans of a common action to Commissioner Jourova in saying, in asking to put at least the same amount of energy, resources for informing the people on representative democracy. We want the same amount of resources for participatory democracy, not just European Citizens Initiative, but for example, the Conference on the Future of Europe that Daniela was telling us about. One of the key elements will be not only who will attend, who will participate, and which kind of rules for participation, but also which kind of information, because even a conference very well composed with the civil society representative, but if the public opinion is not involved, it would be very difficult to insert items, issues that are not in the agenda of, I don't know, huge political parties and political families. So I think that every and each of us, we have different specific goals. Probably we agree on most of them, but we can have different priorities. One of the things that we are trying to pushing with Eumans is to unite different groups on the method, and in particular on the idea that should be strong European investment in informing European public opinion about the tools of civic and democratic participation. So this is just the only thing that I wanted to add. So I hope that we could unite in supporting this draft letter to Commissioner Jourova, and maybe have an appointment with her and her staff that we could attend together with many different groups in asking these reforms. And as Virginia was saying, this could be also an issue to be discussed within the Conference on the Future of Europe. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco Cappato. So we have some time. So in the meantime, if anyone that is here has any question, you can add your name to the chat. Okay, I see hands. So we have Anne Parry, who is both a member of Eumans and a European Federalist. So, and a UK citizen not living in the UK. So a lot of things, Annie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Virginia. Yeah, my questions were for the 3 million people, so for Antonia and Andreas, and I'm interested in understanding exactly the status of the European citizens in the UK. So is it only citizens who European citizens who have settled status who can register to vote? And is this due to the withdrawal agreement? Is this part of the withdrawal agreement? And how long does this right extend? Am I right in understanding that it kind of finishes in 2021? And are the local elections in May open to all European citizens? What do people have to do to vote in the local elections in May? And are the local elections in the whole country? So sorry, there's about 5 questions there, but I hope that to get some answers. Thanks very much.
I'm happy to answer if I can. So this is not covered by the withdrawal agreement. EU citizens had the political right to vote in local elections in the UK before. The elections were supposed to take place in 2020 May, but they were postponed, and that's why they are taking place this spring, this May, a year later. And the UK government confirmed that EU citizens will be able to vote. But for most EU citizens, this is the last time that they can exercise this right. Some EU citizens are also Commonwealth citizens, so they will retain the right. These are the Maltese and the Cypriots, and also Irish citizens, I think, have different rights. As you know, EU citizens have to apply for settled status until the end of June. This is not connected to the right to vote at the election. So EU citizens can still vote even if they don't have settled status in the UK.
Oh, thank you very much. That's very interesting. So it's very important then that all European citizens in the UK should take this opportunity to register to make sure that they actually do vote, even if it's for this last time. And you're going to put pressure on the UK government to try and extend their political rights in the future. And
yeah.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, one thing I would add is that the British government has been concluding a few bilateral agreements with some European countries, such as Portugal and Spain. And the objective is that they are securing British citizens' right to vote in those elections. So let's say in a Spanish local election, British people will be able to vote. And as a result, Spanish people living in the UK, they can also vote. And what we see as a risk is that then the EU citizens who live in the UK, they will have very different political rights. I'm Hungarian, and there is no such agreement with the UK, so I would not be able to vote after 2021.
And Italy?
I don't think Italy has an agreement with the UK yet. I think it's Portugal, Spain, and Poland, I think.
Okay, thank you very much. That's very useful.
Let me know if you have any question or comments, or if maybe also the discussants have comments on what had been said, like on the, I have a couple of questions for a couple of speakers, but okay, so I go with my question to Daniela, which, I mean, Democracy International has been around for quite a long time. So I think one question for you is on the idea of the institutionalization of European citizen assemblies, like how this can happen from a technical perspective. And also there is one story about Democracy International that I tell all the time when thinking about the evolution of European citizen initiatives, because on one side it's true that 1 million of signatures is not a lot in the ideal condition of information, but on the other side there is the whole element of the commitment of the European Commission toward the European citizen initiative. I mean, the commitment is on saying something, basically, is not necessarily on taking action. And I found quite interesting one of the proposals that I remember from Democracy International, which is the idea of following up an ECI with a European citizen initiative as a way to kind of create an additional debate. So how do you see all these topics kind of tied together from your perspective?
Yeah, so we had just a few weeks ago, we had a public hearing organized by Citizens Take Over Europe, where we invited experts of citizens assemblies from all over the EU, all national levels, local levels, and we really were brainstorming how an EU citizens assembly can look like. Because I mean, I can tell you, you know, maybe what I think about it, but I'm also not completely expert. We've also never really had this before in the EU. This would be totally brand new. So this would be something that we're all kind of experimenting with. So it's really important to look at the examples that we have, the really good examples in the EU that we have. Of course, you know, the Irish one is very, is the famous one. There's really good examples in Poland, the French Climate Convention. Currently, right now, actually, I think even tonight, they're meeting the German Bürgerrat, which is a civil society-inspired citizens assembly that is now under patronage of the German government that's taking part. They're discussing Germany's role in the world. So there's a lot of experiences out there. I mean, I think the biggest criteria, I would just say, if we would have an EU Citizens Assembly, is really what is the follow-up. It needs to have some kind of follow-up that the conclusions or the report of the Citizens Assembly will go somewhere, something will happen with it. In the case of Ireland, as you know, it triggered a referendum in the country, and then because of that, they got rid of the abortion laws, they legalized same-sex marriage. So it really shows that citizens assemblies is a really great way. First of all, it's a mirror of society, but it's a good way to take regular people and kind of make them little mini experts on specific topics, get them very well known from the political field, from the scientific field. They get all sorts of input, and from there they kind of make their own judgment, and then they report on it. And from there, I mean, it's much easier, I think, if you're getting ready for a referendum, if you know that, okay, there was a citizens assembly on this topic, well, I trust my peers much more than maybe I trust, a politician's point of view. So I think it's a really interesting way to think about how we kind of do democracy in the future and how we really make it much more participatory. I think that the citizens assemblies could be a really cool way to, I think, bring it next to an ECI. Once there's a successful ECI, to follow it up also with the citizens assembly and let randomly selected people discuss the topic. Is it good for Europe? Is it not? And maybe that will be just enough push on the Commission to also take a little bit more action on it. But to also go back to the story you like, Virginia. So yes, of course, I mean, I think, we talked a little bit about the conference on the future of Europe. We talk a lot about how, the process, but of course we have a lot of what demands, so what would be discussed there. And as Democracy International, we're of course a democracy NGO, so we have a lot of democratic reforms. But one is definitely about reforming the European Citizens Initiative. We have a long history with the European Citizens Initiative, really from the founding of Democracy International, back when the ECI was just an idea 20 years ago. It was the founding members of Democracy International that were lobbying for the ECI in the Lisbon Treaty, which of course is a success. We have it, but that's not our final dream for the ECI. We do want it to be more evolved. So the idea would be, I mean, in very short of how this could look like, what our dream for the ECI is that as a first step, the 1 million signatures would be collected in 1 year, just like it happens now. And at that point, if the institutions decide not to take action, which is very often the case, as we know, or if the action taken is not to the satisfaction of the organizers, which is often also the case, the organizers would then be allowed to have a second collection of signatures with a much higher threshold, let's say maybe 3 million, maybe 5 million signatures. Once this threshold would be met, that shows that there's a lot of mobilization, that there's a lot of interest for this topic that can't really be ignored. And this would trigger then an EU-wide referendum, which we don't have, of course, in the EU right now. The treaties don't foresee this. So this is why this would require a treaty change. It's much more than just changing the rules of the game of the ECI. So this we think, I mean, is a really good way. We're at Democracy International, we're a direct democracy NGO. So we want to see a citizens initiated referendum, not a top-down Brexit style. This is the worst case scenario of how a referendum should look like, but really a Swiss style from the bottom up, where you collect signatures on an issue. You can put it up then to the Commission, or at national level would be the Parliament for review. If they don't take it up, then citizens can say, we continue further, we continue to organize, and if they get more support there, then this is I think a really great way to bring in a really bottom-up democracy in the EU. And if we're going to introduce EU-wide referendums, of course, I think, the best way to do that is using the ECI as the introduction for that. So that's our little dream for the ECI. But this is, of course, once we get the conference on the future of Europe, and then, of course, once we get a convention, this is something that we will lobby for long-term.
Thank you. And in the meantime, I hope we can maybe discuss together the proposal for the information actions, because I think we have this, when it was possible to meet in Brussels, me and Daniela met a few times also physically, but I think this was one of the topics, the matter of, because the Swiss model, and we saw that also in one of the Council of Participatory Democracy organized with Bruno Kaufmann, who is the global correspondent on democracy in Switzerland, I guess member of Democracy International. But the positive of the Swiss model is that citizens are informed one by one about the right to partake. And I think, and this is also something to keep in mind, is that the more the citizens know that what they are doing, it can be the signatures of the vote, has an impact, the more they are interested in doing that. And also I think from a mediatic perspective, journalistic perspective, then the promoter of a citizen action are kind of have more weight than now, because of course now if the political debate is only about the elections and electoral politics, then it doesn't really matter if a group of citizens is doing something somehow. So I think the element of information is essential to imagine to collect even more signatures, but probably this is something to explore, I hope, together. I see that Manlio has a question for Andras.
Yes, thank you very much. I was wondering if Andras could tell us how the 3 million are planning to make this this change, this reform. Besides, in addition to lobbying politicians, how do we plan to engage citizens, and what instruments are we trying to use to achieve the ultimate objective? And also whether we could consider using the citizen assembly method as a way to inform politicians about what citizens want in the UK in relation to voting rights for residents of the UK.
Thank you, Manlio. I think the short-term objective is to increase EU citizens' participation in this election in early May, to show that EU citizens are engaged. I think if we can show a 10% increase, that will already be a good result, and then we can show to the politicians that EU citizens are active politically too. And I think that is the or objective, that EU citizens' voices will be taken more seriously than they are now. As I mentioned in my introduction, some of the political parties we have been talking to, they are more open and they are more aware of this. But if they see in their own research that only 50% of EU citizens are registered, of course they will not take us very seriously. But if we can show that, let's say 70% are registered, it may make a difference, I think. So that's I'm not aware of any longer term, like more ironed out strategy or action plan from the 3 million. I think we will see how this campaign is going. Of course, it's going to be quite difficult because of the COVID situation to have like a dramatic increase of EU citizens' participation. But if we get a slight increase, I think that will be already a good result.
Thank you very much. Okay, if there are no more questions, which I don't see. Okay, so thanks everyone for joining and bringing your activities, actions, perspectives, and also for this exchange. There are all the links in the chat, so each one of you can follow up on the specific matter and initiative that seems more relevant. My recommendation is for sure to go and sign the petition of Citizens Take Over Europe to the European Parliament on the website of the European Parliament. I love the bureaucratic way of submitting signatures to European materials, but it's also time that it's worth because it proves to the institutions that we like the instruments that they have, which is a bit like the registering for vote in the UK. It's easier to fight for a right if you have used it and if you have shown that it's important to you. So thanks everyone. The appointment for Eumans is next Thursday at 6 p.m. for our weekly meeting, and you have all the links also in the convocation email and in the website for Citizens Take Over Europe, Voters Without Borders, the 3 millions, and also the link to the letter to Juhasz that from tomorrow we will start to collect support for. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Nice
Ciao.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye, everybody.